single time. We do have more this time than we normally get because he's here, if I'm going to be honest. But Dennis is the kind that did not go on a legacy to get to where he is or to make things happen. He was unanimously elected Executive Vice President of the International Longshoremen's Association for the AFNL and the CIO in July of 2015 at the union's 54th Quadrennial Convention in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He was elected to one of the top leadership positions in the 45,000-member union, where he came from, had served for 4 years as president of the Atlantic Coast District for the International as well. He was the first elected to a 4-year term as Secretary-Treasurer of ILA Atlantic Coast District. I got several sheets of what this man has done, but the best way to introduce him is just to say, I'm proud to say this morning, y'all get a chance to hear from my friend, Dennis Daggett. Good morning, my brother. And while he's here, after he's given it right away, so that we can make our presentation.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to take my jacket off and relax a little bit. Thank you to President Cleola Brown and to the A.Philip Randolph Institute. And it was a surprise, and thank you for the recognition. And I humbly accept, on behalf of our international president, Harold Daget, our international, our districts, our locals, and most importantly, our rank and file members. So thank you. Today's an honor for me, sitting here, because as a kid, I remember at the conventions when Norman Hill always delivered a very passionate and fiery message to our delegation. And for him to be here today and see him is truly an honor to me. And then to fast forward years later and now to be an officer in the ILA, I've seen firsthand that Cleola Brown continues with that passion and that fiery spirit. So Cleola, I have to give a message to you from our international president, and I'm going to do that now because sometimes I have a tendency to forget things when momentum's going in my speech. And our international president wanted you to know he wanted to thank you for your friendship, most important, your loyalty, and he wanted you to know that we have the utmost respect and nothing but love for you, and we thank you for everything. And by the way, it was great to see you in New Jersey at our AFL-CIO conference. It's always a pleasure. I am beyond proud of the work that the people of the ILA do on and off the job. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dennis Daggett. I am a 4th-generation longshoreman. My family has been working the docks on the west side of Manhattan, Long Island City, Queens, even before the ILA was commissioned in 1892. So it's fair to say that not only is this my job, but this is in my DNA. But it's unfortunate that we can't shake this stigma of an award-winning movie that came out in 1954 called On the Waterfront. And the media and others, they only want to report when there's something negative that happens in our union. They don't want to report on all the good that we do. And this room holds proof to the ILA's commitment to this great movement. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, it's been impossible for me to mention everybody here in the ILA, but I would like to highlight a few people if I may. Let's start with one of my favorite people in this world, 51-year vet and our International Secretary-Treasurer, Mr. Stevie Knott. We have our Assistant General Organizer of the ILA and also President of the South Atlantic and Gulf Coast District, Mr. Alan Robb. And President Brown, Mr. Robb was kind enough to ask me to present you on behalf of the South Atlantic and Gulf Coast District and the ILA a $5,000 check for the APRI.
Please stand up.
Please stand up, Alan.
Please stand up.
They say when you're a union official or you're a coach, you shouldn't have favorites or you shouldn't play favorites, but this is my man. And when I was president of the Atlantic Coast District, I appointed him as president of our Civil Rights Committee, Mr. Bernard Dudley, General Vice President of the ACD. Another person who feels like he's part of my family, him and my dad go way back, and who is our chairman of our Civil Rights Committee and our former general organizer, Mr. Jerry Owens. One of our strong leaders and who is also the president of the A.Philip Randolph Institute of the Union County, New Jersey chapter, Mr. Herbie Hall. The ILA's Queen of the South, President of the A.Philip Randolph, Miami-Dade County, Lavette McKill. Former International Vice President and Executive Vice President of the South Atlantic and Gulf Coast District, APRI Board of Directors, Charles Spencer. We heard from him earlier, ILA Fort Lauderdale and Vice President of APRI, also Director of Region 3 of the CPTU, my brother Mike Payne. Lewis Hines, President of the A.Philip Randolph Institute in Wilmington, Delaware. He's not here with us today, but I want to mention him. Edward Ed Brown III, who is the Hampton Roads, Virginia chapter president, and he's my lifelong friend, and his grandfather, was the founder of the ILA Civil Rights Committee. International Vice President and President of ILA Local 1588, New Jersey, whose incredible devotion and charitable work for the needy children in Bayonne, and my dear friend, Mr. Virgil Maldonado. And from my home local of 1804-1, she has made her mark volunteering for organizations like the Backpack Challenge for underprivileged children and orphans, Noelle Maldonado. And last but certainly not least, I had to mention her because she's one of my favorites. Civil Rights Committee member, works a great deal with the New Jersey AFL-CIO for working women, Linda Welkins from 1233. And if I can I ask all the people in the ILA to please stand up and be recognized? Now you see why I'm so proud. I know we have limited time, but I'd like to say a few words, if I may. First off, I applaud your theme of stay woke. When Cleola asked me to come here and say a few words, I started to sit down and think about what I would say. And I did a little research and I came across your theme, stay woke. And I love it. But it immediately made me think of an expression from the early 1990s in Queens, New York, when they would say on the street, they shook. See, this is exactly what the right wing and the multi-million and billion-dollar corporations don't want us to do. They don't want us to stay woke. They don't want us to be educated on the issues. They don't want us to be engaged because when we stay woke, they shook. They're scared to death. And that's exactly what the ocean carriers in the longshore industry is trying to do to us. They're becoming like the airlines. They're forming alliances. They're involved with mergers and big acquisitions. And they say publicly that it makes them more competitive and it's cost efficient. But the real truth is that they want to control the market. They want the power. And the last thing that they want is a blue-collar union getting in their way. So some of us in the ILA, over a decade ago, because a few of our locals had the vision, and finally, when my dad became president, the International woke up, and we became members of an organization called the IDC, the International Dock Workers Council. And what that is just strictly an organization that is made up of dock workers worldwide. Right now, we're in over 50 countries and over 5 continents. And we had a test this past year, testing our global solidarity. At the direction of our international president, International Vice Presidents Virgil Maldonado, Kenny Riley, and myself were instructed to go to Spain because over in the European Union, they passed a law that was similar to right to work. And in Spain, the prime minister proposed a decree in front of the parliament that would completely attrition out the unionized dock workers over a 3-year period and make them extinct. So we got on a plane and we went to Spain. And we were in Algeciras, Spain, southern tip of Spain. And we stayed in a hotel that sat right above the port. And it was historic by nature. And I say it was historic because centuries ago, there was a war between Morocco, the northern tip of Africa, and the southern tip, Algeciras, in Spain. And it was over trade. And at that exact hotel where we were is where the peace treaty was signed between the two countries. And on a clear day, when you're standing in the port of Algeciras and you look out, you can see the northern tip of Africa. I think it's 12 or 24 kilometers away. So the following day, we had what they call an IDC zone coordinators meeting, where all the zones around the globe are there representing their unions. We met and we discussed our problems, most of which were while we were there in Spain. Then we had a press conference with the media, and during the press conference, I started hearing sounds of bombs going off. And I looked over to my friend Virgil and I said, oh man, what did we get ourselves into? So the press conference was over. We walked out of the hotel and we started to walk down this hill going towards the port. We could hear loud sounds of bombs and fireworks, and we could hear people chanting loud, like it was almost like you're in a stadium. But we couldn't see anything coming down the hill. And as we turned the corner, all you saw was a sea of orange. All dock workers in their safety vests. Thousands of people. And they were cheering. They were doing this cheer, and I couldn't make it out at first. I thought they were cheering, USA, USA. And I had tears coming out of my eyes. I'm like, this is amazing. And Virgil and I and Kenny, we had a translator with us, and he said, no. They're saying, Nayun paso atrás. And what that means is not one step back. So we got up, and we spoke in front of, and when I tell you, thousands of dock workers, their families, their wives, their husbands, their children. Their children were there in support because they were defending their rights, they were defending their livelihoods. It was by far the most powerful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I'm proud to say, because of the solidarity that we had, and we had representatives from Europe and Asia, Australia, New Zealand, South America, both coasts on the United States, both the East and West. And because of that global solidarity, we were able to convince the parliament to overrule the prime minister's decree. And let me tell you how special this was. In the history of Spain, that is only the second time. Think about that. The history of Spain, that is only the second time where the parliament overruled their prime minister. So for us, globalization meant global mobilization. Last year, July 7, 2016, we had the Global Day of Action. It spanned 48 countries over 5 continents. We shut commerce down for 1 hour. We on the East Coast and the ILA, we did it for a number of reasons, but mainly because we wanted to bring safety awareness to our job because our industry is so dangerous. We have lost 34 people in over 10 years. So we felt that our fallen brothers and sisters and their families and their friends, all their loved ones, deserved at least 1 hour of observance. And we also, worldwide, we did it to preserve and protect the rights of collective bargaining. And we sent a message to the governments, we sent a message to the employers, that if you pick on one, you pick on all of us. We have learned in this country right here, especially in the ILA with right to work, that if you allow the cancer to start, the cancer spreads fast. So if they want to exploit a third world country, we are going to be there to defend them. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. If you don't mind, I'm going to speak from the heart. It's very hard for me to speak in a forum like this without really talking from my heart. Apparently, I was one of the naive ones in 2008 that thought racism was dead in this country when President Barack Obama was elected. And I can remember that night in 2008, and I'm not just saying this, I mean this. I remember in 2008 when he was elected, and in Chicago, when he walked out with his beautiful family, and they hugged and they were kissing, and his family kind of broke off, and he walked down that long corridor to give his speech. And to me, I thought that was the greatest speech that I have ever heard in my life. They say that, prior to his heart condition, that Bill Clinton was one of the greatest speakers of all time. But I'll tell you, that night, Bill Clinton couldn't shine Obama's shoes. That was unbelievable. And it was, to me, that whole speech was like an emotional roller coaster. And if you remember the T-shirts that had Obama's silhouette with hope on the bottom, it all came true that night, right? And I remember sitting there and feeling pride and feeling like, I remember laughing, I remember crying, and just being like, it's over. It's dead. It's here, and we could, And then we had the circus of the 2016 presidential election. And racism, sexism, bigotry, you name it, reared its ugly head. But it's so disappointing to me because, just hear me out on this. This is 2017. 2017. Now, if you're my age and maybe a little bit older, you remember in the 80s, there was this movie called Back to the Future. And in Doc's DeLorean, if you remember the clock, October 21st, 2015 was in the future. And I remember watching the movie being like, wow, 2015, man, the cars can be flying around at that point. And here we are in 2017, and we're reverting back to the 50s, the 40s, and the 50s. And what I can't understand is that God has given us this breathtaking world that we call Earth. And I can't figure out why, because I won't say the E word, but I can't figure out why, with so much good on this planet, why the small amount of bad, even though it's horrifying at times, outweighs the good. So what I want to say is, there's no action too small, and this might sound corny, but it's really up to us as parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles to raise our kids the right way. My wife is here, Marissa Daggett. Please sit up. Excuse me. I asked her to come here for one reason. Because I wanted her to be here when I say this in front of you. Excuse me. Sorry. We have a soon-to-be 12-year-old. I'm going to get through this. Sorry. We have a soon-to-be 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. My kids know nothing about black and white. They have no idea the difference between black and white. And I'm looking at you guys eyeball to eyeball. When my kids say, hey, we're going outside and we're playing with our friend Carl, they don't say, I'm going outside to play with my black friend Carl. So I just want to tell you all that I applaud each and every one of you for the work that you do. Thanks, buddy. And I thank you for pushing so hard to make a difference in this world, because it means so much. Thank you. And I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to end like this, and I want to leave you with a quote from my favorite poet. And most people don't even realize he was a poet, but he was a phenomenal one at that. And what he said, and I'm not a jealous person, but when he said this, when he spoke these words, I said, man, I wish they came from me. And I believe that all the good people in this room, we should have this mindset. And what he said was, I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. So I'm going to leave you with this. Remember, neun paso atrás. Not one step back. Stay woke. And what happens when you stay woke? They shook. May God bless you all, and may God bless the ILA. Thank you very much. Sorry I lost you.